They're tending the path on to do that to keep the old model around at a lower price for a while.
Yeah.
But yeah, so the Plus, the 6 Plus, 5.5-inch screen that looks a decent sized screen, I've got to say, because that's when I pick my wife's iPhone up, it always looks tiny now.
It does, and a lot of people say that as well. That they're really tiny now.
I suppose that's just how the market's grown.
Yeah, it's interesting that it's actually adding another screen for developers as well, which I hadn't spotted that was coming. So that's going to be interesting for a few apps.
I'd just say the audio is now working. Rich, I think he's been trying to fix his Surface video to get the audio working. It wasn't. It was at this end. It was the Google Plus. So, Richard, you just spent 15 minutes of your life or whatever that you'll never get back again. Yeah, but I'm interested. I was showing my wife before we came up the two phones, and I was wondering. I was wondering what her reaction would be. And I think she didn't immediately just go, "Oh, that's way too big." She was actually quite interested in it. So because her contract's due to expire at the end of this year, so she would normally look at the 6, but I don't know whether she'll look at the 6 Plus, whether that's too big. I know that generally women tend to go for the smaller phones, but we'll have to see what she thinks. Personally, I like the bigger phone because it's just a clearer. Yep. Screen and everything, but we know what I think. My thoughts on that.
Yeah, if they did a 12-inch phone, it still wouldn't be big enough for you.
Yeah, I've handled an iPhone 5, I think it is, and it does feel amazingly small in the hand. But there are obviously our advantages to having a phone that size. It's so easy to use one-handed, but I do feel that things have moved on. But it certainly is interesting. It's not necessarily like Apple to kind of cave to that kind of pressure. They tend to follow their own path, but clearly they've accepted that people do want bigger phones for things like navigation software for watching videos, or streams of the Apple Keynote.
And the battery, I think it's got improved battery life because it's got that bigger area.
Yes.
Richard said we discussed the camera. Yes, we have, Richard. Yeah. So not unless you can add anything to it. I didn't see all of it, but it didn't seem much change on the camera side of it.
No, not in terms of pixel density or clarity. It was more, as Gary said, around kind of the processing side of it. I saw the HDR technology, and also I think capturing slow motion video and I think 60 frames per second video and things like that. And the Plus runs at 1920 by 1080, which I think is a nice resolution for that size screen. As ever, Apple make excellent hardware, and that does look a very nice design. The sort of curved edges on it and everything. Always really nice. I've never have any issues really with the hardware quality on Apple devices. It's always superb. Yeah, it certainly looks like a nice device. They've moved the on-off switch from the top to the side, which I guess kind of suits that bigger device slightly. It's got the glass kind of wraps around it. It's almost kind of going back to the kind of original, what was it, iPhone 3 design, isn't it?
Yeah.
Kind of curved back. And
yeah, I must admit, I do prefer this design of this one to most of the recent ones. So,
in fact, this looks more like the curved design on the 1520 than the 930. The 930's got that so much squarer in edge.
So Microsoft have gone towards where the iPhone have just gone away from. We'll talk about the Lumias later on as well. But I've got to say, I'll read more about it and try and get some thoughts on it, and try and get a blog post up. Everybody's already seen all the details by now, anyway. But they do look very nice hardware. I don't know whether we've got any UK pricing yet for the 6 and 6 Plus. How much effect it'll have on the price, the bigger version.
Yeah, the only thing I've seen is the US pricing, with basically the iPhone 6 Plus being $100 markup, which I think they've done away with the 32 gigabyte model. There's now just a 16, 64, and 128. Which I think the 128 is a new model, but yeah, basically $100 premium. So I think the standard iPhone 6 started at, I think it was $199, I think, and then for the 16 gig model, and then the iPhone 6 Plus is $299.
They're expensive anyway with off contract, so
mean, quite often you get them with contract. You pay a certain amount, like £100 up front or something like that, and then on a contract.
Yeah, although I mean, having said that, the Lumia 930 was quite pricey.
Yeah.
I mean, admittedly that comes with 32 gig of storage, I think it is. But I think the lower end iPhones actually aren't quite as expensive as I originally thought that they were.
Well, they tend to drop them down as the new one comes out. They drop the other ones down. So we can talk about that more and sort of find out information about it. But you know, I've got to say, as ever, very nice hardware, and I'm looking forward to trying iOS 8 and see how it works. But I'll try that on my iPad Mini.
Certainly, very little lead time. I mean, their pre-orders on the 12th. For delivery in select markets by the 19th, I thought. So certainly not long to wait.
That's typical Apple, though, isn't it? They don't have to announce anything until they've got it on the shelves, just about.
Yes.
Other than the watch.
Yes, and the watch. Now, when are we going to see that?
Sometime next year.
Yeah, which is unusual for Apple.
I think they had to announce something. I think that was the problem, that the market is getting flooded. And unless they actually push something out there which made people stop and think, they probably would be launching into a saturated market, which is not easy to do.
So let's talk about the watch then. So we bring up the Apple page on that. So that's I mean, we expected there was be an iWatch, but it's not. It's just going to be called the Apple Watch. In fact, and then I noticed they just have on the website. It's just got the Apple logo and watch. So
yeah.
It said coming early next year. Interchangeable straps, very nice looking display, but something different and sort of the UI than anybody else has done. I think they're calling it the crown, aren't they, or something like that?
Yeah, so it's a traditional watch, really, little twisty crown thing on the side. You can twist and do. I mean, design-wise, it looks like a small iPhone, doesn't it? On iPad, it's got that same sort of bezel-y type look to it. It's not really, because I mean, a lot of people were thinking it was going to be round, it's going to be like a watch, but I think this has been developed for several years, and they've probably been caught out by the fact that people have gone for round watches recently. I mean, it looks quite nice. It's certainly some of the straps make it look quite nice. It's a proprietary strap band again, so there's going to be people out there selling straps for it. So the crown's there for zooming. You've got touch screen as well. The screen's sapphire glass. Tap and touch are distinguished between somehow. The home screen looks incredibly crowded.
I thought
the little picture demo I saw just a moment ago looks. I can't imagine anybody wanted to look at the pictures that small on the screen. But I don't know what resolution the screen is, because there's very little detail as far as I can see. Yeah,
and like the home screen does look very cluttered, but once you actually get into the apps, I think the crown sort of looks quite nice. But I didn't. What I couldn't work out exactly is if you get a text in, what you can then do with that text. Can you reply back to it using Siri or?
No, that's everything. I don't remember seeing anything about voice on this.
I did see one of the screens had mentioned Siri. I just couldn't get the stream stay up long enough to just see exactly what. But it mentioned Siri, so.
So yeah, okay, I've got it. Got yes, confirmed. Siri on hand for voice control.
Yeah. So maybe you do it like through voice control. Yeah. Again, as we said with the phone, very very nice looking hardware. I'm still 100% convinced, about the smartwatch. I think maybe maybe this is the first generation, and we'll see improvements over time.
I think the problem with smartwatches, and it's the one thing that I found with the Pebble Steel, which actually works, is the battery life. I mean, most of the ones I was seeing at AIFA, and we'll come on to them a bit later, were a day or less in terms of battery life. And that's just not practical for a watch. I don't want to carry a charger around all the time for charging a watch. I mean, at least with the Pebble, I get at least a day and a half's notice that it's getting low on battery. So and it lasts about 5 to 6 days. So that works quite well. But if the iWatch is like all the others, the Apple Watch is like all the others and only got a day's battery life, which seems to be all you can really cram into that size of device with a colour screen. That's a potential problem.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure, I think the things it's great for are for for notifications and that kind of thing. I'm just having to flick through it. It does say about Siri. You can do Hey Siri to kick it off. It doesn't mention that I can see on here too much the battery life.
It's a mystery, the battery life. So a couple of people have already sort of tweeted no statement on battery life.
Yeah, and it's got a sort of what's it called, MagSafe connector, hasn't it? That clips on.
Well, actually, it hasn't. It's wireless charging, but with a MagSafe charging, which I can't quite figure that one out. But I'm sure there's something there on it. The other thing, of course, it has got is a couple of sensors on the back. You can measure your heartbeat. What a really almost creepy sounding thing is you could have your heartbeat transmitted to another watch, which is a bit strange.
Yeah. So when everyone's got their Apple Watch and then the iPhone 6s announcements too, you can imagine those going quite mad.
Yeah, and of course the other thing we should say about this in Apple fashion is that it will be only paired up with an iPhone, won't it?
Yes. Yeah.
Which I think is a shame, but that's the Apple way, and I don't.
Well, it's the same as the Android Wear watches.
Yeah.
They go with Android, don't they? So I mean, that's the advantage that seeing things like the Pebble have got, which Microsoft's new one may have the ability to pair with more than just Apple and.
Yeah.
And may be able to pair with Apple and Android as well as the Microsoft ones, although we know very little about that. But yeah, I think that's an issue really. It means I won't be buying an iWatch an Apple Watch because I don't use an iPhone day to day.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and again, I showed my wife this, and she was kind of, yeah, okay.
The one thing I think
she is an iPhone user.
Talk a bit about your wife. One thing they have done really right on this is that they've got two sizes of this watch coming out. Because I think the biggest problem all the wearables have got at the moment is that they are just too big for thin wrists.
Right.
And I'm not just talking about women's wrists. There's a lot of men with thin wrists as well, and they are way too big for most people. The average population, members of the population, have got smaller wrists than the sizes of most smartwatches.
Right.
And I think that's been a big problem. But it does look like they're actually with the Apple Watch, there is actually going to be one which is going to be a more normal size for a watch.
And is that the strap or the actual front face?
The actual front of the device. Yeah. It's about two-thirds of the size of the full-size one.
Right.
So I think that's a big step forward, and I think there'll be more people following that as well.
Yeah. And I think having the faces and everything else look nice, and you're right, it does have a less masculine look than some of the other ones that we've seen.
Yeah.
But anyway, looks nice, and I'm sure it'll sell well. But like you said, it's unusual for Apple to announce something and still not be out till late, till next year. And I suppose all the Android watches, although they say they're sort of competition, they're not really. If you're an iPhone user, you're not going to get an Android Wear watch. No,
I think the real competition, the people who are probably worried about this are Pebble, because their main sales pitch has been to Apple users. They have got the Android market as well, but up to now their real thrust has been the iPhone users.
I suppose it's keeping you on the platform as well, isn't it? If you think, oh, this looks nice, it keeps you on. Or if you're on Windows Phone and you want one of these, you think, well, okay, it's time to switch.
Yeah, and I think that's fair enough. I mean, personally, I think at the moment, what I've seen in this first round of new phones is that there's nothing which would really drag you quicker than screaming to one of these platforms than the others. I think there's some nice phones out there, but there's some nice watches out there. Sorry, but they've all got faults on them. They've all got problems with them. I mean, the closest thing I found at the moment to something which I can wear as a daily driver, as I say, is the Pebble. I mean, the Pebble still suits me. I can use it, and because I can use it with Windows Phone with a bit of messing around, a really nice app called Pebble Watch Pro. Which has still got some restrictions. I can talk about that later. But that makes it usable. I mean, I was walking through the airport getting notifications on my watch about what was going on with the Apple feed, which was quite discreet and didn't look like I was using my phone in the queue for passport control, which obviously could have got me into trouble. But
I suppose someone like me is a target market for this, but I just don't. I'm I love my gadgets and everything else, but I kind of think I'd want to spend it on the phone side of it maybe, and not.
Yeah, I mean, I've been doing the big experiment with the Pebble Steel. I got given it for my birthday, and I thought, well, I'll really give this a go. I had one on review before, which hadn't gone particularly well because there'd been some faults with it. But I've been using this one non-stop since basically the whole trip at IFA and just before that, and I have found it quite useful. It's that thing where you're carrying lots of stuff. You've got your phone's in your pocket or it's in your bag, and you get a notification come in, and it does make it easy to see those things, or calendar reminders, or particularly alarms. Alarms seem to sit nicely on your wrist. They don't sit so well on your phone. And it's a discrete reminder as well. The fact you get the vibration on your wrist rather than anywhere else, that's nice. I like that. I wish it had a microphone. I think that would be good, and I can certainly see that's nice with the Android watch and the Apple watches, that you're able to communicate your phone with it still tucked away somewhere with the Siri. I'd love to be able to control Cortana with it, for example. That'd be fabulous. But yeah, it's still got some advantages, but it does need that battery life. It can't be something like a phone you have to put on the nightstand and charge every night.
And the I did see a price on it was where were we? £216 or $349.
Yeah, which is kind of shocking, that price, when you consider the Moto watch is $199.
Yeah, it's expensive, but with Apple you pay a premium for.
You do pay a premium, but I think when you consider the Moto watch is supposed to be a luxury Apple, Google Wear watch, then that seems a bit of a premium. And the Pebble Steel is about $249. I think that it does put some price pressure on the Pebble Steel to come up with better pricing, I think. Then of course you've got the LG watch, which I saw you put the video up today, which I saw the other day. That the LG R Watch R, which is a bit weird of a name, but I think the R stands for round, and that's again premium, and that's probably going to come in a similar price to the Apple Watch. So I guess that makes the pricing a bit more reasonable.
It does open up the the market. It gives opportunity for Microsoft to come up with a really good cross-platform device. And I guess whether they want to do one or not, Jason, do you feel as a sort of Windows Phone user left out by not having the option of this, and therefore you want to see Microsoft deliver a device?
Yeah, I mean, like I said before, I'm still not too sure about smartwatches. I just, I quite like a traditional looking watch, but it's certainly, I think Microsoft certainly needs to come up with something. But yeah, I think like most things, with Windows Phone, you just kind of get used to trailing behind. You just accept it as part of the experience.
Yeah. I have to say, I have actually been surprised how much I can do with Windows Phone with the Pebble, considering it's not supported by Pebble at all. There's some really good third-party support out there. Some restrictions, and it'd be really nice if Microsoft could actually get behind. I'll put this plea out. Microsoft, please get behind some of these third-party developers and let them have access to the stuff that is only accessible to the operators, because it would make life a lot better. It would be nice if they could run background notifications and all this stuff, which would just make for the apps to be much more polished. But I am surprised how much I can really do with it, and also surprised how much I don't need to have the phone for it with it. There's a lot of stuff you do. I said, like alarms. Alarms is something which seems to naturally suit to be on a watch, and it's a lot easier to do alarms with a smartwatch than it is to do them on a traditional watch. I can have multiple alarms set and different snooze times and all that sort of stuff, which is quite tricky to do on a traditional watch, but really easy to do on this.
Yeah, I mean, I've been wearing a Fitbit tracker for a little while now, and I've used that now, set it as an alarm, and it just wakes you up gently by gently vibrating in the morning, as opposed to an alarm that kind of wakes the whole household.
And I've got one of these on the Pebble. There's a thing called Morpheus, which is basically one of those things that tracks your sleep patterns. And wakes you up in a particular sleep pattern. I'm not sure which way around, but it does wake you up much more gently. I don't sort of jerk alert. I'm just sort of gently rouse. So that's quite nice. I do like that.
Yeah, that's something that the Fitbit does. You set a time, but then it will be kind of like a few minutes either side, depending on what your sleep pattern is.
Because that's obviously the great thing about some of the smartwatches, and is a threat to things like Fitbit. I mean, obviously we've already got sensor core in the phones, and the Apple watch will actually come with Fitbits like stuff. The Pebble, although it's not particularly implemented well, has got a pedometer in it, so you can do a lot of the things like steps and that already. So there's a lot of this motion tracking stuff which will be you won't need another wearable for.
Yeah, I used Sensor Core in the 1520, and I think found that pretty good actually.
Yeah, a lot of people seem to think that's a really good implementation.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't taken it for runs or anything like that, but I used it when I was in London to see how far I've walked, and I thought it was pretty good. So anything else on the Apple stuff there? I mean, my view is kind of great hardware. iOS 8, I'll wait to see what it's like on the iPad. It's not the watch itself is not enough for me to switch. But I do wish there was a Microsoft watch solution or a watch like the Pebble that was compatible. But then, having said that, I've got a very nice watch, and that was a gift, and I think I'll just keep with that, to be honest.
Yeah, and I always like that as well. I had a watch which I've been wearing for years, which is a gift, but the Pebble's been given to me by the same person, so it's nice in that respect. And I have actually been pleasantly surprised by the style of the steel. I've got the silver one with the black strap on, and that seems to really work for me as a style I like wearing, and I've had quite some positive comments on it. So that's good. I wish there was a bit more resolution on the screen. I think that's the one thing. It's about 7-year-old technology on the screen. So, but that's why it's such good on power. So.
Yeah, that's it. That's the power. Is going to be the interesting thing. The battery life is going to be probably the single thing that makes whether it's a success or fail. And that has to be right. Otherwise, it's a waste of time.
Yeah, having taken a Pebble apart, they use the smallest battery you could ever imagine. So I'm sure there's room for better batteries in the future.
We'll come back to the eFirst stuff in a minute as well. Did you notice that Amazon announced their Fire phones available in the UK today?
Yep, and also the Fire TV was last week, wasn't it, as well?
Yes, the Fire phone I have no interest in. Well, to be honest, I'm not in the Amazon system with Prime or whatever it's called, so none of the Amazon devices really that keen, but Fire isn't particularly interested for the phone, but the TV is probably a little bit more interesting there. That's available now in the UK, so it's been I think it was £79 or something like that.
Yep, yeah, so, and there was some sort of introductory offer on it which I missed because I was away, but
yeah. I think if you're Amazon Prime subscriber, then it's probably worth looking at.
Yeah.
Interesting, just as we're talking, do we need any more set-top box, and whether Microsoft should have a set-top box, and we'll talk about some of the Lumia announcements now, because we talked about a Microsoft set-top box potential. We talked about its potential, but I doubted whether it would ever be anything specific, and we turned out that was right. So Gary, you were there over in IFA, Lumia Nokia event for talking about Lumias, or Microsoft event should say, talking about Lumias. So a whole range of stuff announced.
Yeah, so obviously we thought that the rumours about the 730 and 830 were likely to be true, and they turned out to be true. Fairly much what we predicted on those. The 730 being the so-called selfie phone with 5 megapixel cameras front and back almost. Slight difference between the two. And actually quite nice design, quite nice in hand. 830 is the one I actually quite like. It's like a slimmer 930 with a lower power processor. 10 megapixel camera. I was actually disappointed by that. So I don't know what you thought about that, Jason. The fact it was only 10 megapixel.
Yeah, I mean, I know the 830's, it's clearly pitched at a slightly lower market than the 930, and I guess they do need some differentiation. But yeah, I think for me the 830's kind of needs something to segregate it from the 730s and the 630s. And I think a 20 megapixel processor would have been much better, I guess.
Well, it was interesting because I went almost straightly from that announcement straight to Lenovo's press conference, and Lenovo also launched an Android phone which they were claiming would do selfies, and that had an 8 megapixel front facing camera and 20 megapixel rear facing camera for about the same price as the 830. And you think Microsoft have really got to do something to differentiate themselves in the market, and you'd think they could do better than that. especially since there was a rumoured for a 20 megapixel camera on it. Having said that, it takes fabulous pictures. I had to play with it, and it really does take really good pictures. So the technology in there is very good. So I think that was obviously the bits we expected. Those two phones coming out. So what they're calling it the affordable flagship, the A30, which is a bit. I don't think that it's totally true, but it's not totally untrue either. If they can get the pricing down on it, and admittedly they only put the list prices out and about. I think they've got a chance there. What was more interesting, I thought, was all the stuff which is coming with the new firmware update.
The Denim update.
Yeah, the Denim. So what was going to be called what we've been calling Debian Red, which I always said was really confusing. They now decided to call Denim, which seems a lot more sensible to me, and also has a lot of good connotations with it. I think Denim's got a good feel to it. It's rugged. It's got a bit of style to it as well. Rugged with a bit of style, as someone said. And Ian, I know you.
I've got a description of yourself, Gary.
Yeah, indeed. So. It was interesting to get some sort of reaction from people around that, and I saw Ian, you put up a few good posts on this and comments on it, and I think so. There's a lot of innovations around the camera in there, but they only really apply to the higher end cameras. And what was really interesting to me was that a lot of the stuff which they really pushed on that thing, things like they talked about the fact you can have always on Cortana. Is it Hey Cortana?
Yeah, Hey Cortana, yeah.
But that only works on the high-end phones. It doesn't even work on the two phones they announced in that announcement.
Yeah, because a lot of this stuff relies on the processor that's in the higher-end ones. Yeah,
so it'll only work on the top-end processor. So it only really works on Ian's phone and your phone. So the 930 and the 1520. Actually, the 1520 looks a better phone every time I look at it. I wish they'd just shrink it in size.
I think that Hey Always Listening though is a really nice feature, and that was one of the things I liked about the Motorola X.
But what they really didn't make clear, and I think it's going to come back to bite them, was it wouldn't work on the 830 and it wouldn't work on the 730. So that was that. But a lot of the camera stuff does work across the thing, and it will be available. There was a hell of a lot of confusion about whether it would be available for some of the older phones. And there's definitely confusion on the 1020. There was a lot of tweets at the time saying that was not coming for the 1020. Well, yes, it is coming for the 1020, but some of the features won't work.
Because it certainly certainly closed the loop, doesn't it? Because we've talked about this Windows Phone 8.1 update, and what on earth was happening with it, when was it actually going to officially come out? So it just kind of makes sense that there is an associated firmware update to come with it, which means we're going to have to wait for carriers, unless you're lucky enough to have a non-carrier phone.
Yeah.
But it certainly kind of closes that loop, and as you say, it's because it got me thinking. I remember at the Windows Phone 8 launch, Joe Belfiore talked about the fact that it wasn't going to be backwards compatible with Windows Phone 7, but that they were committed to this 18-month light cycle. But actually, many of these phones, my 920 is now 2 years old in November, I think it is, and it's still receiving these updates. Admittedly, as you would expect, there are some features that aren't available, but even so, it's still good that a 2-year-old phone is receiving these latest, OS enhancements.
Yeah, so I think obviously the main things in the Denim release for Lumia devices is going to be the camera app.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of enhancements there. There's the moment capture, which only works on the high-end cameras. So again, I think that's only 930.
And that moment capture, that's nice. That's like 4K video that you can pull a still out of.
Yeah, exactly. So basically, constant taking stills at 4K, which is quite impressive. And the other thing I thought was really impressive, and the demo they did on screen was really impressive, was the ability of effectively adding flash later to a picture. Which explains why they've got no flashes on all their cameras now.
Yeah, so is that electronic flash, or does that take two pictures, one with the flash, one without, and then give you the option to sort of crossfade between them?
Yeah, so that's exactly what it does, and then you've got a slider so you can introduce more flashlight, more or less. So
yeah, so it's quite a clever idea, and joking aside, it does actually still need you to have a camera with a flash on, but it does mean they don't have, from what I was understanding, they don't have to have quite such a bright flash to actually do it, so you can actually see, you get better images without having to have the massive flash you've got on things like the 1020.
It seems to be
a bit like the live, I don't know what they call the live photo, living photo, something like that. Because you can, if you take a picture with your flash on the 1520, say, and then you open it with the camera app, not the photo viewer, which is a bit confusing, but the camera app, you get to see a few frames beforehand, which are pre-flash.
Yeah.
And then the flash shot as well. I like those living images. I think it's a nice feature. That.
Yeah. Well, I think the whole thing is most of the. If you look at, say, the 1020, for example, obviously on 1020 you've got the same thing. If you actually want to see the high resolution picture, if you use the normal camera app, you don't get it. You have to go into the Nokia camera app, or Lumia camera app, as it will be. And that's basically the same principle here. If you want to get these extra features, you're going to have to use the Lumia camera app.
I must admit, that's been my default camera app for a while now.
In fact, I don't even think on the 1520 there is a camera app other than the Lumia camera app or the Nokia camera app.
I think you can go back to the original one if you turn it off, but yeah,
right.
By default it's turned on.
But what I noticed is you take a picture, if you open it with the photo tile under the photo app, you just get to see the photo.
Yeah, you don't get to see
you don't get the sort of live image, but if you open the camera and then do the preview button, and then you can see the.
Yeah. I have to say that was one thing I found at IFA compared to last year. Last year I was at the 920. And quite often the press conferences are massive and you can't actually get to see things very well. But I was able at this year to use the 1020 even at the back of the hall to actually then re-edit, reframe the pictures to get to the bits of information. So sometimes some of the close-ups I showed you of things were actually taken way back of the hall, which was really useful.
Yeah, there was some of the video was pretty good as well. That came out that.
Yeah, certainly some of the video I took of the Toshiba laptop, which will come tablet, which we'll come back to later, I thought was really good. So yes, it worked very well as an on-site tool.
Yeah. So I think now we've just got to wait for this firmware to be released. We just don't know.
It's not the bits which are non. Lumia specific will be out very, very shortly. Some of the stuff we talked about the other week. I'm hearing that there might be an update next week.
And it was funny because the way they describe it was the denim update includes Windows Phone 8.1 update 1.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think the update 2 will be out, possibly out even before that turns up on our.
Just to really confuse me, because one thing I saw different mixed reports on was whether or not the Lumia 830 would actually include denim at launch, or whether or not it would be an update shortly after launch.
Will be with it, I think, from my notes.
What I played with had it on, but that might have been a pre-release of it.
Yeah, and I just Ed Bott had a post up from discussions he'd had in the audience about whether or not Windows Phone is kind of still too late to the game, and I think while in some ways, on some levels, it's kind of becoming a boring conversation. I think it is still quite relevant in a way. We talk about things like the Sonos app is important, but at the same time, Ian's made the switch now, and I find that with Windows Phone, I choose to use it. When I used to have Windows Mobile, it was my work phone. I was kind of forced to use it and didn't have the option of having anything else. So kind of stuck with it through gritted teeth. But I do find Windows Phone a pleasure to use, and it's yes, there are a couple of apps that I'd really like, but on the whole, it's a nice experience. And I've joked with my wife. She uses the iPad all the time, and she's got my Lumia 920 now, and I think I said last week, we were at Legoland, and she kind of rolled her eyes when I said that the Legoland app wasn't available. But I said to her, look, if you really want an iPhone, it's my personal preference. I don't want to use one, but I'm not going to stop you from owning one. And she said, no, she goes, I am actually quite happy with my phone. I'm not interested in something else. It just does become a bit frustrating when apps aren't available.
Now, another thing, just want to mention on that denim update as well is the glance screen. Which I've got to really like now, but they've added Bing Weather, Health and Fitness, and a few other bits and pieces.
No, they haven't added Bing Weather. They've
added MSN
Weather. What a stupid rebranding! Sorry, that's all I'm going to say on that subject. But
it does kind of make sense, doesn't it? Because I think it's Paul Thurrott said Bing is a search engine, whereas MSN has traditionally been an information portal. And does Bing really mean anything? Because so many people just use Google. My wife refuses to use Bing because she hates the search results that comes up in it. I've got a few work colleagues that refuse to use Bing for the same reasons. And does Bing actually have relevance in terms of those apps?
Yeah, but does MSN have anything relevant? I mean, when you say MSN to people these days, they probably think of something in the late 90s.
Which I used to have.
Yeah. But have you seen the visitor numbers though? It's something like, is it 450 million?
Oh yeah. I mean, to be honest, I've got MSN still my homepage, so I understand where that's coming from, but I don't understand why they're changing it for change's sake. I don't. They went for all this branding of being people got used to it being called that, and now they're changing the name again, and it's kind of typical Microsoft.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
We'll be back on Hotmail at some point.
Yeah, we will.
Yeah.
Why can't they just pick a name and stick to it?
Why don't they call it the Microsoft Network?
Yeah, that would make perfect sense. The Microsoft Network, MSN. Yeah. Okay. No, sorry. But why don't they just call it Microsoft News, Microsoft Weather? Or if they want to stick, or if they've gone to this Lumia branding for everything, why not Lumia Weather and things like that? But,
yes. Yeah.
And that's the other thing we should mention as well. Is that nearly all the Nokia apps have been renamed Lumia now.
Yeah, they have.
Apart from the camera app.
Yeah, which is coming.
Yeah, which is that new one we talked about.
Yeah, will be that. So.
Yeah. But just finishing that glance screen, I really like that. I have it on my bedside cabinet now, and I used to have a sort of a Philips iPod dock alarm thing. Could add 3 brightness settings: off, extremely bright, and a landing aircraft brightness. so it used to light up the whole room and really bug me. But so now I have the Lumia on the side with the glance screen, and that's great. It's just the right brightness, and then of course it's my alarm as well, so it's perfect. So I really like that.
Which of course is Jason hasn't got.
Yeah, and I deliberately stopped using it on my 920 because I kind of knew I was going to get the 930, and so I didn't want to get used to it. But yeah, it's a shame. I think it's to do with the screen technology.
Yeah.
Because of course the 830 has got it, which is one of the things which is a positive.
Yeah, absolutely.
So
it was actually one of the main reasons, because I know I had this great debate what phone I was going for, and I went for the 1020, and one of the things which actually swung me that way again was the fact it had the glance screen on it, because I do find I use that all the time. As Ian says, it's my bed, it is my nightstand as well.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I mentioned this earlier, but a couple of weeks ago we saw, going through the FCC approval in the States, a Miracast dongle from Microsoft, and we all like to sort of put in the post, it could be the Microsoft Chromecast rival, and I did say in the post that I wrote at the time, I suspect it will be a Lumia accessory and not a Chromecast killer, and it was right anyway. I was right, and many of us were right. It's no Microsoft TV or Chromecast device. It is literally a Miracast dongle for Lumia phones.
It is, yeah, and announced as part of the Lumia launches, so very much tied to that.
Nice looking device, though.
Yeah, nice looking device.
Talking of terrible names.
Well, yes.
Let's give it. Yeah.
Are you ready for this?
Microsoft's screen sharing for Lumia phones -HD-10.
Yeah, and I understand there might be an HD20 coming as well. But whether that does differently, I'm not sure.
It's 10 more.
Yeah.
Well, it's probably only available on Verizon Zone or something.
Yeah. What's curious though is, because it would work with the Lumia 2520 as well, and with that having NFC pairing, it would work brilliantly.
Yeah.
So it is a very straight.
Did you get to see it going?
I did, yeah.
It's described for the audio listener, or what it looks like.
It's a round puck, basically, and you can tap your device on top of it to pair it to it. Why you need NFC to pair it to it, I really don't know, to be honest. It's a Miracast device. You can discover them and plug them in, but it does make it slightly quicker.
Yeah, you do have to enter a code though, don't you? Because I've got the Netgear one, so I think it's the fact you can kind of pass it around the room. Which you can.
Yeah, I guess so. It tap all your phones to it to get the code in. But
if you find a room full of people with Lumia phones.
So it plugs into the TV, does it, via HDMI, and then that gives you the
but it does need power from a micro USB as well. Right. So as most of these devices do, it's a bit of an odd shape, really. So I mean, most of these things actually are USB stick type sizes, and they stick them discreetly behind the thing. And I think because they decided on this NFC pairing it, this is designed like a tabletop device, so you almost put it underneath your TV.
Yeah, it's a bit strange. To be honest, I'd rather have it so it plugged in, sort of like you said, USB stick style.
What I did find in my little tests with it is it worked really well. It seemed to be very reliable. As you expect, something I think which is designed for the Lumia phones, it worked first time, which a lot of the Miracast devices don't. So,
but it should be compatible with anything that's Miracast compatible.
Yeah.
Well, this is the thing. I mean, I was having a great conversation with some very technical people at one of the dinners I went to about the whole WiDi and Miracast standard, and the fact that a lot of Miracast devices won't talk to other Miracast devices because the standard's a bit undefined, and there's a few things you can do differently between them. So it is, in lots of ways, better to stick with one which actually works with the devices you're coming from. But yeah, I mean, it worked really well, and it's not too big. It's about the same size as the top of the phone. If you sort of imagine, if you took, say, a 930 and cut it in half, that's about the size of the dongle.
I still find it a strange technology. I mean, I think it's probably great for use with phones. You know, a quick way to project images and pictures and videos that you've got stored on your phone, and you could take it away with you and take it to friends' houses. But I still kind of wish Microsoft had more of a direct, AirPlay and Chromecast competitor.
Yeah, well, they do really, called DLNA, but they don't use it.
Yeah.
And as we said the week on the show, why doesn't the Xbox One have this functionality built into it?
True enough, although it is going to have DLNA very, very shortly. So
yeah.
Well,
also, I think with the Xbox One, because of the built-in OneDrive access, I think sometimes it's less important because you can just chances are you're going to be displaying photos and videos, so you can just pull that down. But
actually, I tried the Nokia Beamer app for the first time this weekend, and I was just quite impressed with that.
Yeah, that works really well, and I've used that a lot actually for doing demos, especially when I'm sort of doing app demos and showing things.
But that doesn't require you to be on the same network either. So
it's really clever in that respect.
Yeah, it's like if anybody hasn't seen it, it's like you are doing screen projection, but it's more like a single frame. And it does it over the internet through a browser, so the person looking at your screen doesn't have to be where you are. They just have a browser open, and it sort of refreshes the screen.
I've actually used it to demo an app to a guy in America, so it does work very well.
Yeah, it's quite an interesting idea, that, and I was showing it to kids. I said, next time you want to show something off to one of your friends, just do it from home and send them the link.
Yeah.
I've not seen that on anything else, but yeah, that was quite nice. So we'll come back to we'll finish off on the rest of the stuff, but I just want to mention, as you mentioned, the DLNA, the October update for the Xbox One is out if you're a preview user. So these are the changes you're going to see if you're not a preview user next month. And as you said, Gary, it does include the DLNA playback on the Media Player app.
Yeah.
Now, did I talk about last week? I think I did talk about the video guide that I did, so how to fix your thing. Oh yeah, I did actually. I remember talking about that. But anyway, the new version includes DLNA and MKV support. So I'm going to try see if I can get live TV working on it. It should be possible.
Yeah, I would definitely think you could use DVB Logic for that.
Or HD Home Run.
Or HD Home. Well, yeah, and I know people have used HD Home Run Primes in the States to it effectively. So I know that definitely works.
Yeah. Now, the other thing included in the October update, there's some gaming stuff, but for on the media side, there's the support for the Xbox One digital TV tuner, which is coming later in the month, and streaming and live TV streaming as well. I'm undecided about this really, whether because I use Skybox, I don't use terrestrial. I guess I could get one to test it, but I don't think I'd use it. So it
gives you an extra tuner to watch so you can watch the BBC feed of the Formula One at the same time as the Sky feed.
Yes, that's true. Yeah, that's always a good idea. Yeah.
I think we as the kids get older, we're thinking about converting what is now their playroom into like a games room, and probably put the 360 up there initially. But at some point when if we got them an Xbox One or moved our Xbox One up there, I think I'd definitely be tempted to buy the TV tuner for it, just as an alternative method of watching TV.
Especially if they added a DVR function to it.
Yeah, I mean, even without it, to be honest, just to be able to watch TV, especially the on-demand apps are still missing missing in action on Xbox One. But once those are in there, I think recording stuff kind of becomes less and less important.
And of course we should have the iPlayer soon.
Yes, yeah, and also noticed in the Xbox One October release notes, I noticed it mentioned you can pause live TV for up to half an hour, which I guess isn't very long. Which I don't think they'd mentioned before.
Yeah, but that's a fair buffer that it's got in it there for the half an hour, isn't it? As HD TV.
Yes, yeah.
I'm thinking about whether to try one or not. I mean, it'd be good to do a review of one, but I'm just not sure how much use to get out of it.
Yeah. Just while we're mentioning the DLNA and DVB Logic, I actually managed to speak to Pavlo Oberon from DVB Logic while I was at IFA, and they've got a few interesting things coming up. I was a bit concerned for them because obviously their development team is actually based in the Ukraine.
Right.
So there's obviously been some real concerns there, but they seem to have been okay and the progress and things. But obviously, it's had an impact on their time frames. And they're working on some very interesting stuff at the moment, which I can't really say anything about because I promised not to. But if it comes out, it's going to make their product a lot more relevant again. So I think we'll keep our eyes open for that.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, there's some great technology in there.
Oh yeah, and the stuff and with the NAS boxes now, if you have a NAS box TV tuners in, it's a really good way of recording TV and then having that as your basis for your Xbox One as a client for it.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, one other thing I'll mention there before we go back to wrap up on IFA, My Movies 5.1 pre-release. The previous versions had a restriction that you needed 2,500 points or more. So you needed to contribute to My Movies essentially with metadata to be able to test it out. That was to restrict the numbers. That restriction's been lifted now, so anybody can try that. And I have to say, it looks a nice update, worth giving a try. Right, now just to go back to IFA. So you sent quite a lot of videos in. So let's have a look. I'll have a look at the order, sort of reverse order that we've got on the site. So you've played with some of the new Windows phones. So the Arcos one.
Yes, it's the Arcos one. Yeah, Arcos. I never know how to pronounce it. So they've basically got. I've forgotten the number of it. Actually, there's so many names.
40, I think it was.
40. Yes, it's the Cesium 40, which is actually I was actually quite pleasantly surprised how performant that was. I mean, I know Windows Phone is always good on low-end hardware anyway, but this is sort of almost like sub 520 hardware if you work it out. But it seemed to work really well.
Yeah, and that's like 79 quid or something like that, isn't it?
Yeah, 79 quid list. Sort of off the record, I was being told maybe £50, and that'll be unlocked. So, I mean, you can't really beat that for price. And if you look at the video, it did respond very, very well. The animations worked well. Moving into things like music didn't take very long. It was a good little phone, and it's got a flash on the back, and it comes in a range of nice colour cases as well. So it's almost like it reminds me of the 8X in some ways with nice colour cases. It's got really sort of vibrant colours. So I was actually quite impressed with that. I couldn't play with it for very long. One thing I found all the way around this year, that people didn't want you to spend much hands-on time on things. So I'm guessing they're trying to avoid you finding problems with them. But for the price, I think that's going to be a really nice screen. It's a Snapdragon 200 quad-core processor, 4-inch screen, very vibrant as well. So way too small for you, of course. But for those people who like iPhones, it's about the probably right size.
And the Prestigo.
Oh yeah, the Prestigo was funny. They wouldn't even let me touch that. I don't know what was up with it. I mean, again, actually, very similar looking phone to the. One of them was to the. So they've basically got two models, and the smaller model looked very much like the Archos phone. So I think they may have sourced it from similar places. So that's a 4-inch device, priced at €89, only available in the European market from what I can work out.
Yeah, Austria and Germany, I think the press release.
Yeah, Austria and Germany. So but I guess you can import one.
Yeah.
You can't really see much from the video I was actually allowed to take because, as I said, they weren't letting you handle them much. but they did actually, when the one time they actually picked it up and used it, it did seem to actually work quite quickly. Nice devices in terms of shape and size. The bigger one is the 5-inch device is probably about the perfect size for a Windows Phone. €159 for that. No specs on the cameras or anything like that, so it's been really difficult to see if they're actually going to be worthwhile. But they seem to be getting a lot of interest from the German press. They were more prepared to talk to the German. That's really impressed, I guess, because they were launching there.
Now, the video that did get a lot of interest that you did was the Encore Mini.
Yeah, so the Encore Mini was actually one of my favourite products from EVA, especially at the price. I mean, it's amazing. So
yeah.
This is the so you've got the on Encore, which is obviously the 8-inch version.
Yeah.
This is the 7-inch version of the cheaper Encore. And when the rep told me the price, I almost fell over because it was going to be £99 list.
Yeah.
Is that the actual price, or is that the HP price?
No, this is the actual price. €129 or £99 UK list price, and I'm hearing rumours it might be £20 to £30 cheaper than that in some shops.
Wow.
So I think we'll see it sort of the usual places: Amazon, Currys, PC World.
Yep, yeah, and it's a lovely bit of kit. I mean, it runs really fast. I couldn't take any video of this because they wouldn't let me, but I actually ran it against them next to my Surface RT, and it was running far faster than that in terms of going through things. Rear-facing camera, front-facing camera, it's very nice. The video doesn't show off the sleekness of it because of the big, large security thing they stuck on the back of it. But it is actually quite thin. It's got micro USB for charging, but also it comes with micro USB to USB cable, USB host, so you've got the full USB ability on there. Micro SD slot which takes up to 128 gigs, they said, although they did think they would take the 256 as well. It's got Intel wide-eye support, and this is really weird. They say wide-eye but no Miracast, but Miracast is based on wide-eye, so I'm not quite sure how that could work. I assume it's a software limitation of some sort, but no other form of connectivity though, so you're either going to use that USB to get your video out or wide-eye.
Yeah, but for sort of 80 or 90, even 99 quid, I mean, I think it's a really good price.
I mean, I have to say, why you would buy an iPad when you could get that functionality for that price, I really don't know.
Yeah, I'm interested to try one. I mean, I do use my Encore 8, although I do find the iPad works better. I think it's just a smoother experience, but for the price.
I think there is. Yeah, I mean, for the price, it's just. Well, okay, why would you buy an Android tablet at that?
Yeah, absolutely.
Price. I mean, it's just an incredible price for what you're getting. Obviously, it's full-blown Windows. It's running on a very decent Atom processor. It was very performant. There were a couple of things they wouldn't, because it was a pre-release, they wouldn't let me show a couple of things on video, but I was able to play very, very decent HD video on it. Worked really well. Desktop stuff was working well. Surprisingly good in desktop mode for actually tapping it and things. They must have a very fine resolution touch sensor on it because it seemed to work really well for that. I was remarkably impressed by that product. I think it's the first of many. There's going to be a lot more around that price mark and lower. I mean, I would not be surprised to see by this time next year we will have £40 to £50 Windows tablets.
Mm-hmm. My biggest fear is that, I mean, it's great that these tablets are, so cheap, and it's great that they're running Intel processors, which means you can put whatever you want on it. But part of the reason why, in the past I've suggested to friends and family to buy either an iPad or an Android tablet is because they're just, they're kind of unbreakable. It's great these things have got Intel processors in them, but that along with that comes the complexity of a PC.
Yeah, true. Although you talk about Androids being unbreakable, there's one of the first cases of ransomware on Androids this week. So,
yeah, okay. So Android's a bad example, but I mean, an iPad or
an iPad is fairly unbreakable. Yes.
Yeah, or to this point in time, a Surface, an ARM-based Windows RT tablet. It's a very different animal. Part of the reason why people are moving away from PCs at home is because you can install all sorts on them, and they get slow, and you have to think about drivers, and
exactly.
That's my worry, I guess.
I don't deny that there is that definitely that risk. And it'll be interesting to see what Threshold brings to this.
Yeah, definitely.
I mean, one the other thing I should say on this is it also comes with a year's. I can't remember which version of it, but it's a year's Office 365 Home, isn't it?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
So you get a year for free, and then you get the very low cost subscription going on from that. So I mean, that's that on its own. That's almost worth as much as the tablets.
Yeah.
So it's crazy, and also I think you get the terabyte of cloud storage as well.
Yeah.
So it's a no-brainer almost on that.
Yeah.
It's nice to have the choice.
Yeah, I guess also to add what I said, the one thing I am overlooking, of course, is the effectiveness of the Windows 8 PC refresh. If you do get yourself into trouble, it's so easy.
Yeah, it is. Yeah,
to get yourself back, as long as you've remembered to store stuff in the cloud, of course.
Yeah.
And not your nudie pictures.
Yeah.
Well, actually,
yes. Which, by the way, are servers on the internet, not fluffy clouds in the sky.
Yes.
It's interesting you say about that, because my dad actually had to do that over the weekend. His technical support team was away in Berlin for some reason, so he wasn't able to call on them. And he actually did the whole refresh himself, which I was pretty impressed with, and got it back up and running on his PC. So, that was after a power glitch, so it wasn't anything particularly Windows related, but got it all back, all running. So that's really impressive. I also had a look at the Arcos tablet as well. I couldn't get any video of that because I've been a bit fussy about video, but that was equally low price, not quite so as performant as the Toshiba, I didn't think, although it was pre-release, so there may well be improvements to that, and I think there will be others into this market as well. The other thing I didn't get much video of, but it was definitely noticeable, was the return of the netbook.
Oh yes.
So
the ePC.
Yeah, so there's the ePad, I think it's called. No, eBook. Sorry, the eBook, which is a basically a notebook, in netbook terms. So netbooks for Windows 8.1 are coming back, and all sub £199 with Office. So they're all coming with Windows with Bing, which obviously is the free version of Windows, so they can cut the price down again. So I think we're going to be seeing £149, £139 netbooks as a common price, and then the step up from that when you get out of the Atom versions. And the big announcement from IFA, which I'll come to in a moment, is the next level of convertible PCs. The price ranges for those is around about $299.
Well, I think we'll continue with this next week. Actually, we won't. Well, I won't. I'm not here next week, so I was going to ask you to host next week. But yeah, carry on with that next week, because I think we're just about out of time this week.
Yeah. So one thing I did want to quickly mention, because I did almost spoke to there, and we will go on to it more next week. But the big announcement for me for this year was the Intel Core M chip.
Right.
And the Core M chip is really significant because it's the first and next generation Intel chip. It's a much thinner platform. It's much faster, lower power consumption, and it is the perfect chip for tablets and convertibles. It means, for example, if they made the Surface Pro 3 with the Core M chip, even its most powerful version, they wouldn't need a fan.
And they wouldn't need to cook people with it then?
No, they wouldn't need to cook people. It's a huge, significant announcement, and it was probably the most significant announcement of that. The other thing I wanted to briefly mention, because I know this is a lot of people have been asking me about this. The Lenco, and full disclosure, Lenco took me out to a very nice dinner, but this didn't influence my view of their product at all. Have announced that one of the first things to use to be part of the All-Join Alliance on AllPlay. So this is a Sonos competitor, and we're going to be seeing an awful lot of this over the next few months. Things on the AllPlay, which is primarily a Qualcomm initiative, and of course Qualcomm chips are in everything these days. Open source basically system, so if you buy one set of AllPlay speakers. You can add anybody else's AllPlay speakers to them to expand it. I think it's the first real competitor for Sonos, and sound quality is really good. But we'll talk a bit more about that next week as well.
Yeah, excellent stuff. Right, well, so I'll let you two sort of talk next week. But so we won't be live streaming next week, but back on the podcast. So just Gary, where can we find you?
You can find me on Fascinating Tech. Obviously, coming to the end of one issue, we're about to have our IFA special, so a lot of the stuff I've covered tonight will be in more detail in there. One thing I've forgotten to mention tonight, I have got a competition from one of the Fascinating Tech sponsors for digital lifestyle readers. So Abby Fine Reader OCR software. So all I want to know is, when was Abby first launched? When did the company first launch? If you can email that in, there's a copy of Abby Fine Reader OCR available for you.
Do you want me to get those emails, or do you want to?
You can have those emails, Ian, and I'll because people know your email address.
Ian@thedigitallifestyle.com.
Yeah, and we'll sort it out. But Fine Reader 12, and it's a really good product as well. Excellent product. And I'll probably talk a bit about that next week as well.
Jace, where do we find you?
You can find me on Twitter @DatabaseJace.
Excellent stuff. So thanks everybody in the chat room. Let's be back next week with the podcast and on YouTube channel and everywhere else, and we'll see you then.
Take care.
Cheerio, bye-bye.
That's a long one.
Excellent.